I want to share with you a mistake I made, or at least what I think was a mistake with respect to gear choice. In 2006, I had the honor of playing on a record by my friend David Fields. If I remember the story correctly, our wives were friends, and they got talking and realized that their respective husbands played music, and that's kind of how we got connected. And I was very fortunate that he invited me to play on his album. The signal chain for that record was my bass, and I recorded my Gallion Cougar 112 cabinet. They get more of a rock and roll vibe, and I powered it with a Mesa walkabout head. That was a great head, by the way. There was no direct bass on that record because we wanted more of a rock and roll sound. The mistake I made was I brought one bass to the session. I only had one bass at the time. It was a 5-string Cort with active EMG-J pickups. And I love that bass. I played that bass on everything. I thought it was pretty versatile. It was set up the way I liked it. But it was the only bass I had. When we arrived at the session, there was what I recall was a late 70s Fender Precision bass. It was black with a white guard and it had a maple board. It was really, really heavy. My guess would be in the 11, 12 pound range. It had some mojo, it had vibe. The action was higher than what I wanted. But here's where the mistake was. Dave had suggested, hey, we have this P bass here. Why don't you play the P bass on the recording? And I looked at it and I played it and I noodled around on it a little bit, and I'm like, nothing special about this bass. This, of course, was kind of before the massive hype of vintage Fender basses. And I just didn't know enough at the time to kind of realize what kind of piece of iconic rock history was kind of sitting in front of me. So that was my own ignorance at the time. But my whole thing is I just didn't like the way it played, and I was so attached to playing my 5-string with active EMGs that, I insisted I'm going to play my 5-string on this record. And thankfully, Dave was gracious enough to say, okay, play your bass. But in retrospect, I think I picked the wrong bass for that recording. Even though I liked the way my 5-string sounded, I think it had a little bit more of a mid-hump to it. It was, by the nature of active EMGs, a bit on the clean side. I don't want to call it sterile, but it was definitely on the clean side. And I think for the nature of the tracks we recorded, it was just the wrong bass. But more importantly, the mistake I made was I did not please the artist. I went into a session to play on his songs. He made an instrument suggestion and I said, nope, I'm playing my bass. And that was the mistake. Let's give the track a listen. For the sake of time, I've truncated the track so the intro leads into the second verse. Let's give it a listen.
That we can live in the midst of all this mess. It's a place where we are truly free. 'Cause we were made for more than this. Deeper than selfishness, than empty answers to questions, empty lies. let's run the race, not looking back again. Cling to the hope that he has won. A great high priest has made us clean, so let's follow him up to the throne.
All right. Now, if I'm going to be really critical of my own playing, I would say the execution was all right. I mean, I had a few notes, especially in those dotted eighth notes, where a few of them were a little too kind of ahead and on the beat than I really wanted it. I wish a few of them would sit back a little bit more. The note choice was fine, but listening back now, I think the bass tone was a little too narrow, perhaps a smidge on the nasal side, and that was the sound of that bass. I had set it up with the active EMGs to really cut through. It had kind of a narrow band in that low mid that just kind of beamed through the PA, and that's how I had it set up. But I think for this tune, it needed kind of a broader, cushier, and gushier bass sound, and it needed a little more clang, a little more ting 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 up in the top end. That bass just didn't do. So I think in retrospect, I should have played that late 70s P bass that was sitting there. More importantly, I should have listened to the artist, and I should have pleased the artist by playing that P bass. Because now, looking back and remembering how that session went, and now listening to the record again after 15 plus years, granted there's a kind of a modern renaissance of the precision bass, but still I think for that type of track and the tone we were going for, the better bass would have been a P bass. So, what do I have in store for you today? I managed to borrow an old P bass. Now, this is not a Fender. This is a Tokai, the Hard Puncher, made in Japan. These were excellent, high-quality Fender copies from the early 80s, late 80s. Great copies, very good quality coming out of the factory in Japan. This bass belongs to a friend of mine, Ken Sinneave. He is a legendary bass player, plays for Street Heart, Loverboy, Tom Cochrane fame. And lucky for me, he lives down the street from me. So he was very generous in lending me an older P bass so I can hopefully demonstrate the tonal difference. And you be the judge. Did I play the wrong bass?
Mess. It's a place where we are truly free. 'Cause we were made for more than this, deeper than our selfishness, than empty answers to questions. Empty lies. So let's run the race, not looking back again. Cling to the hope that he has won. A great high priest has made us clean, so let's follow him up to the throne.
Well, thanks for listening and watching through that playthrough. I subjectively, now knowing what I know and having gone through what I've gone through, I think the P bass sits better in that track. I think it has just kind of a more pillowy, gushier bass tone. And I ran this bass wide open, volume up, tone all the way up. So it has that high-end clank to it as well that gives that extra bite. So I wish I could have recut this whole record on that late 70s P bass, because I think it would have served the songs and it would have served the album better. But what I do have is, lesson learned, and hopefully I can take that knowledge forward and not make the same mistake again. So what I will leave you with is, as bass players and drummers, our role is to support the song and support the artist we play for. Golden rule, please the artist, and hopefully collaborate in an open dialogue about what instrument and what tones best serve the song. Until next time, peace.